Hello, welcome to the YouTube tutorial for Dr. Block's virtual event, virtual repurposed upcycled palette party. You all should have at this point your boards. Open up the kit. You should have a little apron. Mine's already here. And then inside you'll also have this picker. It may have fallen out of the bag with the apron. A picker like this. You should also have some dabbers, little makeup sponges that look like this, and two paper plates that look like this, as well as your board. Now your board is going to be either black or whitewashed or I believe rustic. This one is like a black rustic board. You can kind of see it. The custom stencil that you have already applied to your board is this tan thing right here. You can see it on this sample also. It's this tan thing. So what we are going to be doing today is we're going to be dumping our little containers of paint onto our paper plates. So you should all have a little container, and you open it up and you can dump it out onto the paper plate here and put that to the side. And then you're going to have an additional paper plate, which is underneath the one you have. So take that out and we're going to put that to the side. The trick to these stencils, because these are repurposed palettes that actually have been planed and sanded by myself and stained organically. There's no VOC in any of the paint. The stain is coffee, tea, vinegar, and steel wool. They have kind of bumps and ridges. This stencil is not perfect. So you're gonna actually, when you get your board, if it was out in the cold, it may have some bumps around it. So you're gonna wanna run your warm finger around the area and kind of push those stencils down. Don't worry about over here, but you're gonna wanna push it all around just to make sure it goes down, lays down flat. Like here's a bump right here, just where the stencil, this tan thing, meets the wood. You're gonna kind of rub around there. Don't worry about here, but just like right there. Kind of go around. Okay, so once we've done that, here's one. All right, so then we're going to be practicing. Now some of you have wood palettes that have like the state of Maryland, very open area, and some have just all words like this. The ones that have the big open area, we're going to be using a little bit of a different technique, and the ones that just have words, we're going to be doing a different way. So anyway, what you're going to be doing is, and this may get on your fingernails. It does come off with just a wet paper towel, but if you'd like to put on some plastic gloves, I'm sure you could do that. All right, so what we're gonna do is take out the makeup sponge between our thumb and our pointer finger. We're going to dip it into the paint, the color you've chosen, and then we're going to actually take it off. See how much paint that is? See, that's very, it's globby and it's wet. When we're applying this paint to this stencil, we almost want a dry sponge. So you're gonna keep bouncing that sponge on the extra paper plate until it's almost like nothing. See that? And you can see on my hand, basically that's too much here. We want like that. See that right there? That's gonna be your first kind of like I guess sprinkle of paint. You are not going to want to dab a big glob on there because the palettes are uneven and rustic. The paint will get underneath of that stencil very easily and it will bleed. So if we're not adding a lot of paint, and also when we're applying the paint onto the stencil, we're not gonna jam it in there. And if you see little seams where the two boards come together, don't try to get into there. Just go over it very lightly. So once you have your dabber kind of with all the paint taken off, this is what, I'm just going to take a little bit off of the stencil still. That's what it'll look like, okay? So your first coat, I'm just showing you on the stencil. Now and you can use the side of the stencil to take more paint off. But basically, the ones who have like the letters with the family name, you're going to be filling in that big area first. This one needs a little bit more paint. But you're basically going to be filling in very lightly. See that? And we're going up and down, trying not to touch the stencil for the first coat. The state of Maryland, you're going to try to fill that in and kind of swerve it a little. Not back and forth. You're going to kind of go in and out, like up and down like that. And kind of give it a little swerve. Okay, so that's for the letters, like the letter A, the letter B, the letter M. Inside of that, you're going to fill that in. Okay, now the letter, like the last name, you're going to actually do the same thing. Grab some paint, take it all off on the sponge, and then you're going to come across this stencil, and you're going to be, I'm gonna zoom in. And make sure, you don't have too much. I always do just a little bit just to make sure. And then we're going to be very, very lightly going right over top. See that first coat of paint? You can barely even see it. Barely see it. Barely see it. It should look choppy. It should look horrible. But the most important thing is, if you have to say, how long do I have to wait for it to dry for the next coat, you've used entirely too much paint. This first coat should look like a dusting. Like it's barely even on there. And the second coat and third coat will all look the same. And it's just these little dustings of paint that go over top that create this perfect image. So there we go. That's your first coat, okay? It shouldn't even be wet. It's already dry. Then we're going to take the sponge, and then our big one here, we're going to make sure that was a little too much there. So we're going to go back in, get a little closer to the stencil, and kind of go over it like that. Okay? And then do the same thing here. Make sure you take it off on the stencil very, very lightly. Very, very lightly. But the most important thing is we're not putting a lot of paint. This is not going to be a solid, solid, solid color. You want that rustic board to still shine through. That's your second coat. Grab a little more paint, take it off on the side of the stencil, and go back over. Whoops, that was a little too much. So, and if you dab a glob and it globs, just leave it alone. Don't push it down, don't wipe it. Just let it be. You can use your finger and wipe it off if there's way too much, but basically your first coat is going to be, and your second coat, it's just a whole bunch of barely, like an airbrushed kind of paint. Now you're probably saying, well, you know what? It doesn't even look like there's any paint on there. It doesn't. And it's very difficult to see what it looks like with that tan stencil on because it's deceiving. It looks like you haven't done any paint, but in actuality, when I take this off, you'll notice, I'll do a little cheat for you, that it actually pops out really, really well. See that? And see how perfect it is? So I am going to do another coat because I do want a little bit darker. But the most important thing is basically taking the paint, taking it off, and your first coat just being so extremely light. Your second coat, so extremely light. And we're just building up, building those coats of paint. Until you're finally at, a third or fourth coat of paint, if you'd like. If you just want one coat, that's fine too. Now this is just acrylic paint. If you don't like the colors you've got, some of you have lighter colors and maybe with the whitewash board, not sure if it's gonna pop as much, grab any acrylic paint you have at home and you can use that. And if this sponge is too big for you, you can cut it in half. All right, so this is just an example. Now, those of you who have the big letter boards, I'm gonna show you what this looks like. See that? It is a perfect image. It was just, we're building light coats. All right, and I'm gonna continue doing this one for you. Taking it off on the side of the stencil. That was a little bit too much, but light coats. And it should never be wet. If it's wet on the board, that means you've used entirely too much paint. And it is definitely going to bleed. And if it bleeds, it just doesn't look good. That's all. And we're not trying to jam it down. See those little crevices? We're pretending those aren't even there. You can always go back in with the picker and a little bit of paint and touch it up. But I've always told people they can go back in and touch it up, and no one has ever done it. Because a lot of people think that it's going to show, but they actually like the way the rustic kind of pops through. Kind of the rustic board underneath. All right, so there's Sweet. And I'm not jamming it down in there. I'm just swirling, getting lots and lots and lots of light coats. A little bit more paint, taking it all off, almost like a dry sponge. And this is about, I don't know, maybe like the 4th coat I've done. But the secret is you're building layers. And you don't want to glob. If it's wet, it's not the right process. Because we just need to do very, very light coats. And I'll show you what this looks like. So you're going to grab your picker when you're done. You're going to pick out the center of the E's. And now careful, when you dig, you want to get it started on the side, but don't jam it in there because it will pick the wood. And then you're going to grab the edge and you're just going to pull. It'll rip. That's okay. It's okay if it rips because this is a one-time use stencil. This is a stencil that is not going to be reused. Not sure where that goes. All right. There you go. And there you go. See how it's a perfect image? And that kind of pops. That was just very, very light coats. All right, and that's pretty much it. That's how it goes. And enjoy your signs. Tag me on Instagram if you are done your sign and you want to show me it. Thanks so much. Have a great holiday.